We've had several diverse presentations here this morning. Mine's going to be probably a little more personal. It's things that we are doing at Cattle Empire. It's more of a boots on the ground look at what we're up to. A few weeks ago, I was at a meeting, and one of the speakers there described that you really need to be aware of what your window is, what your perspective is. So this is my attempt at letting you know where I'm coming from. I work solely for Cattle Empire Feed Yards right now. It's a company that consists of 4 feed yards, ranging in size from 18,000 up to 87,500 head of cattle on feed. This is our bigger yard, the 87,000 head yard. We also have a Holstein calf ranch that is about 50,000 head capacity. We buy day-old Holstein bull calves and turn them into steers and feed them out for 6 months and then take them into the feed yard. So they're a supply for our feed yards. The operation also includes a very large farming operation. It's within Haskell County, but there's also some farmland outside of Haskell County. It's 100% family owned, so we can say we are a family farm. Again, it is all in Haskell County. And then I just wanted to make it clear that I started consulting with Cattle Empire on an independent basis in 2004. And then in 2011, I came on staff. Cattle Empire was very concerned about animal welfare and antimicrobial use. They knew that was part of my heartbeat, and so it was a very good fit for both of us. I realize that there might be one or two in the room that does not know where Haskell County is, so I'm going to point it out to you. It's right there. For a point of reference, there's Dodge City. Many of you may not want to admit to being a Gunsmoke fan because it might date you a little bit, but that's where Gunsmoke was centered. This is Wichita, and then this is Kansas City, Kansas City, Missouri, home of the world champion Royals. Haskell County we're very proud of this. Everybody talks about how flat Kansas is. Haskell County is the flattest county in the state of Kansas. You can, if your dog runs off, you can watch him leave for 3 days. Okay, now we're going to get down to business. Again, this is part of my perspective, part of my window on the world. My pharmacology professor in vet school beat this into our heads. He said all drugs are poisons, and therapy comes from a proper drug regimen. And then another philosophy I subscribe to is that use of an antibiotic is an indication that our management practices have failed. And I got that one from a person that's in this room. I won't embarrass him by calling him out, but I have tried to work under these philosophies for quite some time. Several months ago now, I was speaking at a veterinary conference, and I put that up on the screen in front of a bunch of beef cattle veterinarians. There's probably 130 of them in the room, and I said, how many of you would agree with that statement? And then there was 2 hands that went up, and that kind of surprised me. So we talked about that a little bit, and then a slide or two later, I popped up this statement, and I asked them, how many of you would agree with that statement? And every hand in the room went up. And so I pointed out that this is essentially the inverse of that. But it really surprised me, some of the responses there. Now, I do not believe that we can manage our way out of all antibiotic use. We want to believe we're good managers, but we're not that good. So just dispel that thought right now. And I also want to say that I do not believe that just because we use antibiotics according to label, that we are using good stewardship there. Okay, again, these are things that we are doing within Cattle Empire. In 2004, we went BVD PI free. And for those of you that aren't that familiar with the virus, this is kind of a nutshell approach to how we get persistently infected cattle with BVD. The fetus becomes infected while in gestation, between 40 to 120 days of gestation, and because of that, that fetus will accept the virus as itself. And it will never clear the virus, so that's where we get the term persistent infection. It sheds huge, huge amounts of this virus every day of its life, which results in immunosuppression, and the pen mates and herd mates are constantly under an immune challenge. So all of our cattle that come into Cattle Empire are tested for persistent infection of BVD, and we quarantine the positive, persistently infected positive animals. Something else that we've done at Cattle Empire is we've initiated post-treatment intervals. Obviously, this is nothing that wild, that new. But back in the early 2000s, when we started getting quite a few of these longer-acting antibiotics, the gentleman I used to practice with, Dr. Bill Hessman, and I were discussing what's the point of having all these long-acting antibiotics if we're going to give them 24 hours to work or 48 hours to work and then retreat them. Shouldn't we be giving those long-acting antibiotics a better chance than that? And so one of our hospital managers at Cattle Empire actually approached us with the same question. He says, why aren't we taking advantage of this? Can we put some limits on it? So we started to initiate some post-treatment intervals in the feed yards. And this was a real learning experience for me because I didn't, number one, I didn't know how long post-treatment intervals should be. And number two, we had lots of feedback, lots of advice from apparently some of the greatest pharmacological minds on the face of the earth, and that would be the feedlot cowboy. It was really tough to get this pushed. Fortunately, the Brown family that owns Cattle Empire was behind us all the way, and they helped us out in getting these post-treatment intervals initiated. And so this is I wanted to check your vision, but this is from May of 2013, and don't try to read that because I'm going to have another slide up here in a minute that's going to make it a little easier for you. But this is a third-party independent report from that compares our feed yards to feed yards that are in your area, and our area is called the Central Plains, and then there's all U.S. participants, so it goes all the way across the U.S. So you can compare performance data, health data, et cetera, against these yards, and of course everybody in this data set gets this same report with their data singled out. So this is the information that we accumulated there, and my slide didn't come up. I've actually got the whole U.S. participants down here as well. But in this particular data set, Cattle Empire had 93 lots of cattle that were included in the data, a total head count of 10,276 head. And I put in the feed conversion because that's very important, of course. Feed efficiency is the key to profitability. So we had low feed conversion, 6 pounds of feed to 1 pound of gain, which is good, especially in comparison to the other groups. But our medicine per head was down at $12.31, and we had a death loss of 1.7. If we compare that to the Central Plains, there was obviously a bigger group of cattle included in this data set, a total of 85,000 head. Their feed conversion was a little worse. Their medicine was up substantially, and death loss was slightly higher. Now, this was not a randomized controlled study by any means. This was just data reported and collected by an independent third party, so I didn't try to even put any statistics to this. But we've seen this trend ever since we started taking out our BVD PIs and started working with our post-treatment intervals. I am very pleased to say Like I said earlier, this is from May. This particular chart's from May of 2013. Our numbers are consistently like that, but in the last couple years, these other groups have started to narrow this gap. So I think ours hasn't gone up, theirs have gone down, and so I think everyone's moving in this direction. And I'm not trying to carry on like that we're doing anything special. We're just very blessed in that the family that owns Cattle Empire is willing to give me the latitude to do these things. This looks great, but I can promise you I've cost Cattle Empire a lot of money with some of my ideas as well. The all U.S. participants was in a similar trend. I simply can't recall the numbers, but there should be another bar down there, but it's missing apparently. Another thing that we've done, and before I start into this, I want to make Cattle Empire is a shareholder of this technology. It's called Southfork. Southfork consists of a high-frequency ear tag that you put in the cattle's ear, obviously. This is a picture of the tag. For reference, this is the button that goes in the backside of the tag, and as most of you that have put in ear tags on cattle, the button's about the size of a quarter, so you can kind of guesstimate how big the ear tag is. Also has an antenna, and it's a little hard to see, but right along here on the front side of the bunk is that antenna. It runs along the entire length of the bunk, and then you can see this is a computer radio module that beams the signal back to a base computer. And so what will happen is this antenna, a calf will come up to the bunk, stick his head in the bunk, and that antenna reads that tag and turns it on. And so while the calf is eating, it's recording the time that calf has got his head in the bunk. Of course, unhealthy calves are probably not going to eat very long, if they eat at all. So it does not detect if the calf actually eats or how much he eats. It's just that he visited the bunk and that he stayed there X amount of time. So this bunk visit data is entered into an algorithm, and then a daily pull list is created for our pen riders to go in and get the cattle. So we tested this technology, and we compared our conventional disease detection methods, the feedlot cowboy, against the Southfork. We randomized cattle by 5 head. A load of cattle would come in, we'd put 5 head into the conventional pen, 5 head into the Southfork pen, and kept doing that until the respective pens were full. Each conventional group was placed right next door to its corresponding Southfork group. At initial processing, we did use telazithromycin for metaphylaxis, and we used a 10-day post-metaphylactic interval. And this was during the 60-day starter period. These are calves that when they come in, we determine that they're fairly high risk. That's why we use the metaphylaxis, and so we'll put them on a starter period. Once that 60 days is up, we'll sort them into more uniform groups and put them into the finish yard. So once the post-metaphylactic interval was met, the cowboys pulled cattle from the conventional pens as they normally would. And then we'd give them a list of the cattle that were in the Southfork pens of the cattle they could pull. And that was, it was kind of eye-opening, because the first day, my expectations were that the Southfork system would actually have a huge list of cattle. And it didn't turn out that way. So this is a chart breakdown of that technology, or that particular experiment. About 700 head in each group. Our first pulls, we pulled nearly twice as many by the conventional or cowboy method, half as many with the Southfork system. 44% of those needed retreated, and this was by cowboy eyeballing it. 23% of these needed retreated, and again, 54% of the second pulls needed treated a third time, and 36% of the second pulls needed treated a third time. And then all of these were statistically different. Interestingly, the BRD mortality, while there's a numerical trend there, was not statistically different. And so that was very interesting. Like I said, when we started that study, we really believed that the system was going to pull a lot more cattle than our cowboys would, but it turned around to be the opposite. Obviously, by virtue of this, our antibiotic use went down. We certainly didn't hurt ourselves on the number of cattle we lost. This makes me wonder about my philosophy, or I guess adds credence to my philosophy that all drugs are poisons, and we have to have the right therapy, the right regimen for proper therapy. The cowboys, the first day that we started making these pulls again, they were freaking out when they saw how short that Southfork list was. And the main cowboy that we had riding these cattle, he called me up. I didn't want to be there. I did not want to be standing in front of those pens for fear of what I might see. So I purposefully stayed away. And when he got his list of cattle that he needed to pull, he calls me up. He says, "Doc, this is going to be a wreck. This is going to be a wreck." And I said, "Mike, we got to stay the course. We got to stay the course." And it's probably a good thing I wasn't there, because I might have agreed with him. So I told him, I said, "Mike, go through all those Southfork pens and make yourself a wish list." And I said, "Write down the ear tag numbers of every calf that you want to get out of there today." And so he did. And I can't remember that. It was like 40 more head that he wanted to pull that day. 80% of those cattle were never pulled during the entire feeding period, and none of them died. So we can use technology. This is not the only technology of this kind that's out there. There's a technology called ReadyTag. So it's a little bit different, but it kind of basically the same premise. So I think as a beef industry, we're finding some great opportunities to use our antimicrobials in a more judicious or good stewardship manner. So anyway, as I close, I just want to acknowledge that the Brown family has given me a lot of latitude to work with a lot of these technologies, a lot of these ideas that I have, a lot of ideas that they have. And without their support, number one, we wouldn't be able to achieve some of the things we do. They're willing to share it with the industry, which is fairly unique in its own right. So I want to make sure that I acknowledge Roy Brown, the CEO, and the entire Brown family for some of the things that we've been able to do at Cattle Empire.